I'll be honest, I was about to kick things off with your injury 25 years ago or thereabouts, but I might actually just start with how you're going at the moment because you've actually been meeting with a surgeon quite recently. Sounds as though your ankles had a bit of a nasty flare up. What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, well, let's talk about the injury first. So, a football injury 25 years ago. So it was my last game of football ever, thankfully.
Hmm.
And it was just running the ball up as a very large prop forward and went into a three-man tackle, two up high, one down low. And we all went to the ground. And the guy down low landed on my leg, twisted it around. And when I looked down, there was a bit of pain and my foot had disappeared. And when I investigated a bit more, my foot was actually facing the opposite direction. And I thought,
Right.
well, that's not good.
No.
So off the field I went, ambulance and off to hospital. So that's the injury itself. We can talk a bit more about that later. But it was a broken leg, dislocated ankle, three surgeries over the course of 4 days to have the plate put in there and a stabilising pin. And then after recovery from that, 12 weeks or so in plaster. But after recovery of that, it was off to the physio and then trying to do all the things to get the ankle at least to a point where I could walk on it and use it
Mhm.
as a regular person. Over the years, it's come and gone. It's been debilitating. It's been at the point where I couldn't walk. I struggled with stairs, things like that. But moving all the way forward to most recently was training for the T100 on the Gold Coast and did a lot of running in November through to March of this year. And I
Okay.
think every second week I was probably running a half marathon distance on a Sunday morning with the local nudgy runners. And so I did about 6 or 7 half marathons in that period. And the ankle just wore down and got worse and worse and worse and worse. So I finally did the T100
Yeah.
and decided after that and said to my wife, Selena, and my beautiful wife, Selena, and I just said, I think it's time. It's time to go and get something done. So I
Mm.
went off to the doctor, did some x-rays, and the doctor first said that it's pretty arthritic. But today was the day to go see the specialist. So
Mm.
we went to the specialist and he said, look, it's got onset arthritis, but that's not to worry about. He said there's some bone spurs that have developed in there and we could probably do some surgery and clean those up. He said the main problem he thinks is something that we're going to deal with is a large buildup of scar tissue, which the more I run, the longer I run, the more inflamed it gets,
Mm.
which is where that debilitating pain comes in. And then it takes days for that scar tissue to settle down again. So we're off for an MRI, which I'll book in soon, back to the specialist and then work out if we're going to do surgery, work out where in my race schedule we're going to fit surgery and 6 to 8 weeks of recovery.
So the challenges that you're experiencing now in terms of your ankle and the scar tissue and the spurs that you just mentioned, and indeed arthritis, is that something that the surgeon foreshadowed when you did the injury originally?
Well, originally I was told immediately that when I get older there'll be arthritis, and I just accepted. I had no dramas with that whatsoever.
Yeah.
And arthritis is very common with young and older people, and it gets dealt with in different ways. So I was expecting that for a long, long time, and but to actually hear it recently to go, you've got arthritis in your
Mm.
ankle now was kind of made me feel very old, funnily enough.
Mm.
Um, but I was happy to hear it's not from the orthopedic surgeon, it's not anything I need to worry about at this stage.
Mm.
But it's certainly coming.
So can you tell me when you did that injury, when was that, 25 years ago, what were you told in terms of limitations with, with movement? Because I know that you were told that if you ever got back to running, that you'd be severely limited in what you could do. I mean, did you believe what the treatment team were telling you at the time, or was there a part of you that thought, well, there's actually, I want to write that chapter of my life?
Oh, when you talk about treatment team 25 years ago, that was just a physio sitting at the hospital and then a physio sitting in their office, just
Yep.
saying, "Can you just do these exercises on a regular basis?" I don't even think resistance bands were a thing back then. It was just push your ankle against the wall and hope for the best.
Mm.
Um, and I did as much as I thought I could or should for a younger person. But it just never came good. So I've only got about 70% mobility in the ankle, and it's been that way pretty much from the day it broke or when they
Mm.
reset it. So it's always been a problem, but the walking part, and I run my wife says I run very. I can't even remember the word that she uses. She
Mm.
can text it into you later.
Mhm.
But I just got to run like this. And when I
Yep.
walk, I kind of favour one side and things like that. So because on my left is good and my right just is, partly fused. So it just makes it very awkward. But
Mm.
I think, well, you know what? If it's fused, it means then it's not going to get any worse. And I just think maybe it just feels like having a little carbon plate inside my leg or inside my foot that's just going to propel me forward off my right foot. That's how I look at it. That's the positives.
You're in good shape now, but for a number of years after you did that injury, from what you told me, your exercise and health took a bit of a back seat. I think you said that you threw yourself into work, potentially as a way of coping with something you love being taken away from you. Is that how you saw that period of your life?
Yeah, it's quite funny. I went straight into work, and I even when I was still in with the plaster cast on, I was down at
Mm.
work at 5 a.m. because I had nothing better to do. So I was at the office at 5 a.m. and just starting to do work. And when I had to go back for another surgery um, to readjust the plate, I went to work that day, went up to the hospital, had the surgery, woke back up a couple of hours later, went straight back to the office again and kept working. And that kind of consumed my life. And then at that stage, I was still single, so that led into working hard. Okay, my leg's getting better. I'm a little bit more mobile. Let's go out and have a drink with
Mhm.
the guys. We haven't been doing that for a while, and then that probably went on for a number of years after that. And then, of course, no exercise because I felt like I couldn't run or do anything. Add alcohol and add bad food, bad diet, and just eventually what turned into a bad lifestyle. And things just kind of got out of hand. Well, I look at it now and things they got out of hand, but you just don't realize that at the time.
Mm. When did you realize that things were out of hand?
When did I? When I,
Uh,
but probably when I couldn't chase my young daughters around the backyard for any more than 30 seconds.
mm,
That's when certainly weight wise, I was up around the 130 kilo mark, and I thought, you think, oh, I'm going okay, I'm fit, I'm alive, and I'm doing well. And I just struggled for breath and just struggled for any sort of fitness at the time. And I'd for dead set for a half a minute to a minute running around the backyard would wear me out.
wow. So, how difficult was it to accept that new reality? I mean, if you were to wind the clock back a number of years before you had your injury, I mean, presumably you're in the shape of your life. I mean, was it a difficult realization to come to?
I, it, I knew I had to do something about it,
Mm,
and everybody knows, and you'll know for sure that somebody says, "Oh, I wish I could lose some weight," and you tell them this is what you do to lose weight, and they said, "Oh, I can't do that. I'm not ready yet."
mm,
I was at that stage as well. I wasn't ready to change, but then one morning I woke up and I said, "Enough's enough. I've got to
mm,
change. If I don't change, it's just going to get worse, and it's going to be even more unhealthy." So I just woke up one day and thought, "I'm going to change." And I rang a friend of mine in Sydney. His name's Sean. Sean's been on this journey with me for a long time. We've been friends for an awful long time.
mhm.
And he was coming to Brisbane, and he sat me down. We had coffee, and we started talking about the weight loss, and he'd been through that himself. And he basically bought me coffee, took my hand, took me to the chemist, and bought me a bottle of chlorophyll, which is a digestive. It's a
Right.
yucky green digestive. And he said, have this every morning, eat a little bit better. This will help you start to lose weight. Once you start to lose weight, you'll get a cadence for doing that, and it'll become a bit of a habit. And
Was
that's
it
exactly what happened. So,
was it
so he
meant
bought my
for
first bottle of chlorophyll.
was it meant for human consumption?
It, it, on the bottle, it says yes, but when you
Okay.
taste it, it is awful.
Do they still sell it? Like kiddies?
It,
Really? Okay,
They
didn't
do.
know.
They
Yeah.
do. And it is actually, it's, people talk about lemon water, just lemon and
Mm,
water, but yeah, the chlorophyll is what we call green goo.
mm.
It is, it makes everything green. So, but it works as a digestive. It works really, really well. So
So,
if anyone wants to go give
yeah.
it a go, it tastes
Okay.
awful,
Yeah.
but it does work.
So was it around that time that because you had a friend of yours, I think Dougal, who had spent a number of years trying to convince you to take up triathlons. Are you happy to talk to me
Yeah.
about when you decided to finally take him up on that offer?
Dougal is one of the nicest people on the planet.
Mm,
And every person, any person that's come across him will tell you exactly that.
mm,
And he's just a lovely guy, and he'll do anything for anyone. But we were working at the company we were working for. He for a couple he knew that I'd been losing weight, and he knew that I'd been cycling to work, and so he knew that I was riding the bike.
mm-hmm,
And he sort of, one year he said, "I'll come and do the corporate triathlon." I said, "What do you want me to do?" He said, "Ride the bike." I said, "No, I'm not interested in that." And then it's basically going to the Gold Coast and riding the bike for 10 kilometres. That's all he wanted me to do.
mm,
So I said no. So the next year he asked me again. I said, no, I just don't want to. And then the next year he said, "Look, I'm only going to ask you one last time.
mm.
Come down and just ride the bike just for some teams and help people, make people happy."
Mhm,
And I said, "Dukes, if I'm going to do it, I might as well just do the whole lot." And then I went to the pool and thought I'll give swimming a go. And you
mm.
know what? Couldn't swim a lap. It was awful. It was it
Really?
was it was it was embarrassing. There was 6-year-olds swimming past me. So anyway, I still have 6-year-olds swimming past me, but they're state athletes now. But Dougal was responsible for getting me onto that first event, and he coordinated the whole thing for the corporate try for the company. We went down. We had a great time. There's about 30 of us or so that turned up, and I did it for the next 3 years. But it was after that first event I finished. I hadn't even finished the run, and I was enjoying it so much, and I knew as soon as I finished, I wanted to do another one.
Mm,
And on my way home from that, I set myself 2 goals. I said, I thought I really, really enjoy that. That's a good adventure to get into.
mm,
And I set 2 goals, and one was to do 100 triathlons, and the other one was to keep doing triathlons until I was in my 80s.
mhm,
So at least I had a long-term goal. So I've still
mm.
got a few decades to go. Um, And that's pretty much how it started. So it was Dougal pestering me that got me interested in triathlon, which in turn became a pivotal point in how my life changed
Mm.
and where I'm at today.
Well, I think today you've exceeded the 100 triathlons. Congratulations. I think you're sitting at close to 110, aren't you now?
Yeah. 100, I think 110 is the next one.
There we go. So can I ask just how punishing are those triathlons on your body, especially your ankle? I mean, in what kind of shape are you after the events are finished?
Oh, depending on the event, on the day, how the lead up is, what the training might have been, how the body's feeling. Some days are punishing, and other days I can just walk away without any dramas.
Mm,
Um, I did actually. I just want to go back to Dukes one more because I know you and I spoke a few weeks ago, and I mentioned this. Um, I hadn't seen Dukes for a number of years, and we ran into each other at Jetty to Jetty. And I ran over to my wife and I said, "That's Dougal. He's the guy who got me into triathlons." And
mm.
she said to me, "Does he know that?" And I went, "I don't think he does." And she said, "Well, you better go tell him." So I ran back, gave him a big hug, told him thank you, and then told him he was the reason that I'm where I'm at now.
Oh,
And
wow.
then I ran back to my wife and gave her a hug and said thank you.
Oh, what a beautiful story. You're selling yourself a little bit short. I mean, you're not just a triathlete. You hold your own in your age grade. I think you've even represented Australia in some competitions. Can you remember the moment that you realized, hey, I'm actually pretty good at this?
Yeah, when Dave told me I was pretty good at it,
Okay.
I was just toddling along and doing my bit. And there was a race a couple of years ago on the Gold Coast, and finished the race. And a very, very good friend of mine who has been on my triathlon journey all the way along, Dave Tabernacle from Helix Triathlon Club. And we were just chatting after the race, and he said, why don't you join Triathlon Australia? Because your times are good enough that you should be trying to qualify for the Australian teams. That's when I realised that if Dave's telling me this, and he's
Hmm.
been around the business for a long time, if he's telling somebody this, you've got to believe it. So that was
Yeah.
probably the first time I believed that I was good enough to be competing with people that are attempting to represent Australia. So then off that journey, off I went.
So was it during that conversation that you missed your medal presentation?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, we were so in depth in conversation. We were only 30 meters away from the podiums, and we were so in depth in conversation.
Yeah.
when I turned around and Selena said to me, they've done medal presentations. And I said, have they done mine? And she said, yes. So I actually had to go down and beg for my medal and actually tell them who I was. And so it was quite funny, but it
Yeah.
was a memorable, certainly a memorable day.
Mm.
So that was a day with that finish that we've spoken about as well. That's all packed into that one event.
Mm. Yeah, one thing, Nick, that fascinates me about you is how analytical you are. Now, there is a fine line between being analytical and being obsessive, but you tend to study your competitors. You have race tactics. You're heavily invested in, diet and nutrition. Has that always been part of your personality, or did participating and competing in triathlons unlock that side of you?
I was certainly I've always been a data nut. So, when you're a kid, follow football and you're always
Mm.
keeping data on your favourite teams and things like that.
Yeah.
And then through work, always fastidious with data spreadsheets and financials, all those things. But getting into triathlon, it was just when I was just racing, it was just turning up and having a good time and finishing and picking up the occasional third place. When my diet changed, I got a little bit better, but certainly when Dave said you should be trying to represent Australia, and I thought, well, if Dave can show me or help me map out a path for that, then I can start building on that and start working on it. So when Dave explained to me, this is how you do it,
Mm.
I built a spreadsheet and I tracked everything. And I tracked every athlete in my age group that was competing for
Wow.
these 20 spots in the Australian team.
Oh.
So I needed to, I just wanted to make sure that I knew where I was at on the journey. And it wasn't at the end where they would go, here's the points, or
Mhm.
here's a team announcement and things, and big surprise. I knew the minute one, I think out of 12 races, I think it was race 9, when the minute race 9 finished, and I knew who finished where, and I think that race might have been, say, Victoria.
Mm.
I knew whether I'd qualified or not that day based on the data that I've been keeping.
Really?
And that's just, it's kind of fun researching and seeing how the other guys go. And a lot of us are, very good friends on course, and there's some great photos. And I'll just turn up to events and have hugs and get pushed away by some and get hugs back by others. And we're all good friends. There's a photograph of me racing in Australia where, on the run,
Mhm.
I'm ahead of one of my friends. His name's Mark, and there's a photograph of us, or a video of us, that Selena had taken inadvertently, where Mark's running past me on the run,
Mhm.
and he's tapped me on the back, and he's sledged me and said, "What's wrong with you today, brother?"
Oh.
And then he just laughed. Then he made me laugh, and then he took off and beat me by 40 seconds.
Oh.
So there's all little things like that, but there's days where I know I'm going to beat somebody. There's days where I can pick where I can find some time. There's events where I know that transition is going to be real
Mhm.
key for me.
Nick, one thing that I know you speak very openly about is racing on a low carb diet. You're sort of self confessed fat adapted athlete.
Now, am I fat adapted enough to do an Ironman in 4 hours? Probably not. Um, am I fat adapted enough to do an Ironman in under 6 hours? Closer to 5? Yeah, absolutely. Um, but yeah, if for those that have those nutritional carbs that keep them through events, and the gels and the bananas and all
Mm.
that sort of stuff, it works for them. That's great. And their times in most cases are better than mine anyway. So I'm not arguing with that. What I do is I don't have to worry about my food before, during, or after an event. Just turn up to an event, race, finish the event, and go home. That's pretty as simple as it was. And that's my wife Selena's got a lot to do with that. She's diabetic, so she's low carb or zero carb.
Okay.
And I just said to her that when we came together a number of years ago, she explained to me she was diabetic, and I said, "Well, what do you eat?" And she explained to me what she ate, and I said, "That sounds great. I'll do that too." So I just adopted a low carb diet, and it supports her health wise and lifestyle wise. But it's been a revelation for me, because I dropped 15 kilos in a number of, maybe 3 or 4 months,
Oh, wow.
and then all of a sudden my running got better, my cycling got better.
So can I ask? I mean, obviously the triathlons have taken their toll on your body. I mean, it's hard to know whether or not you're ankle would be in any different shape if you hadn't competed. But how difficult do you find it to balance that competitive drive that you have with listening to your body and the signals that it's giving?
I'm better at it now than what I was or have been.
Mm,
Um, there's periods I think, and COVID probably had a bit to do with it. It was periods there, and certainly COVID, where I had more time on my hands, where I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And I had you wear the garment, of course, and then you set yourself goals. And I had running goals, cycling goals, swimming goals, walking goals, things like that. So it didn't matter whether I was injured, I just keep pushing. And I
mm,
thought that's what athletes do. And my Selena said to me one day, "Why don't you just take the watch off? Just go cycling with it. Just do everything
okay.
without the watch." So I took it off. I don't wear it when I ride my bike anymore.
Hmm.
I know I'm reasonably good on my bike. I don't need to collect data for that. And that just I started reducing my training loads, which then actually was a less impact on the body. So now I train for what I was doing on average leading into COVID and certainly through COVID to what I'm doing now. My training loads dropped by 30 or 40%.
So, what are you just training um, smarter? I mean, what adjustments have you made to your, I guess, training regime to still be able to get as much performance as you have previously out of your body?
Yes, training smarter, yes, but probably training lazier is probably the way of doing it because I enjoy my rest time and I enjoy being at home and I enjoy being around the animals and I enjoy being around Selena and I cherish that so much. So I'm now not out doing 20 hours a week. I'd be flat out doing 10, 80 hours a week. And I swim 2 or 3 times a week, whereas I used to be swimming 4 or 5, 6 times a week. I might run 1 or 2 times a week now, where I used to run 3 or 4 times, push myself to run 3 or 4 times a week.
Hmm.
And I used to cycle every single day. That is, I'd cycle to work, I'd do extras. I'd find another hour in the afternoon or the morning to go for a bike ride. Now I would ride maybe 2 days a week, three at best.
Okay.
Um, and the body, as far as the body goes, recovery is good. So I'm not fatiguing my body as much. But I know there's got to be a balance because as I'm getting older, my body is easily or more easily injured or strained. And that's the trade-off. So if I was doing a heavier load, my body would be in a really, really bad way. So I know as I get older, I've got to train
Mm,
a little bit lazy. So instead of just going out and running at the same pace, or running at my fastest pace I possibly can, I might go out and do intervals or fartleks or is it the Jeffy method or the walk run.
oh yeah.
I'm happy to go down the track and do 400s. In the gym in the morning, I'll do 400s with a walk between and things like that.
You've mentioned your wife Selena a few times in this conversation. To what would you say you're the most grateful to her for?
The patience.
Mm,
There's a number of things between us that changed my life. So I'll I had been married for 19 years and I have two beautiful girls, Lucy and Emily. Lucy's just turned 20. Um,
mhm,
Emily will be 18 early next year, and it was a long marriage. I struggled in it. I probably wasn't the best husband, and alcohol was a big part of my part in that marriage, and it wasn't healthy. And there, food and weight and things like that. So in the end, as does, marriages fall apart. People grow apart, and that was tough. And it was tough on the girls. And it was tough on me.
mm,
And then when I met Selena, that just changed everything because she brought immediate peace and calm to my life and complete understanding. And so it's been a whole heap of puzzles that we've picked up off the floor and kind of put together, and it's
mm,
it's just all made sense and just made everything just work and everything beautiful. And I'm so blessed.
mm.
Selena every day. I just every day I'm just so blessed that she's in my life, and I wouldn't be who I am, and possibly, to be honest, Josh,
Yeah.
might not even be here if it wasn't for her.
Oh,
And
wow.
and that's a big statement,
Yeah.
but it's true. Things were, in the past things weren't great, but they're great now. So that's the best way to describe it.
I love hearing that. And you both, she's also a triathlete. You guys compete together, is that right?
She got she got sick of carrying my bags, so she said she just She looked at me one day. She said, "I'm doing a triathlon." And I
Really?
said, "Oh, that's good." Yeah.
So I thought that was a feature of your lives separately before you met.
She was a runner. She'd done 10Ks, 21Ks. She was
Yeah.
she'd booked herself to go out and do the Big Red Bash run before they cancelled it and turned it into the
Okay.
Big Red Bash music festival.
Yeah.
So she was a runner, and she still runs a bit now. But yeah, it was just the fact that she was. I think she got sick of turning up on triathlon mornings, carrying my bag, and then anyone who's been to a triathlon waiting for their other partner or whoever it might be to race knows how boring it is because there's nothing to do but just watch people go like that every 20 minutes.
Nick, looking back at your 109 triathlons, which one stands out as being in your Runbelievable Hall of Fame?
Darwin.
Okay.
Darwin was unique. Yeah. Oh, look, I've done some fantastic events and I've had some brilliant finishes and Australian Championships and that photo finish a couple of years ago. But yeah,
Mm,
Darwin for me was just the pinnacle. And when I say unique, they've got a Darwin Triathlon Club up there, and they've got a whole series and a Northern Territory series that goes on, and they do standards and duathlons, aquathlons, and
hmm
it's a great community. And I've made some great friends up in Darwin. But I had to go up there because Dave said to me, and I probably shouldn't be saying this, but because other people might cotton on, but Dave said to me on the qualifying for Australian journey, you've got to go race somewhere innocuous. And I said, well, I'll go race in Darwin. So I set up to go race in Darwin. So we flew up there. I had to fly up there on a midnight flight. So I had to book in a hotel for 4 nights, even though I only got to stay for 2 because you get in at 1 a.m. and you go straight to the hotel.
hmm
But on the day where you swim in Darwin is in Lake Alexander, which is only 30 metres from the beach where the crocodiles are, and there's no fences.
Mm,
So nobody can
okay.
guarantee a crocodile doesn't just walk up over the road and jump in the lake.
Not liking the sound of
But
this, but keep going.
But what they tell you is crocodiles won't attack when there's a lot of people around. Crocodiles will generally just attack. They'll aim on one item, but if there's a lot of people in the water and it looks like there's something big happening, crocodiles will generally leave you alone. So we all thought, yeah, just get in the water, we'll be fine. Pretty spine tingling though to swim in that lake. Particularly the day before when you're just doing the sightings of the boys and you're kind of out there with one or two other people, and just thinking that the crocs are right there. Yeah, but that was pretty cool. The bike ride was really good. So Darwin, humidity wise, you would think very, very hot, but the bike ride in the morning, so early we started because we started in the dark, but on the bike ride, it was a beautiful, crisp, cool morning. While the sun was coming up. So the bike was pretty much shaded the whole way in the very early morning light. And it was a beautiful bike ride. And I've got a fantastic photo in Darwin of me just flying through one of the parks. And I spied the cameraman as luckily I can, gave them a nice wave and a big smile, and it's just a really nice blurry kind of photograph. And but you got to the run, so bike off and off on the run. Sun comes up, humidity hits you, and the
Oh,
run was awful.
oh,
It was just awful. But my goal was just to finish.
mm,
I didn't know who I was racing, but I thought, you know what, I'm going okay. Nobody's passed me, so I'm going okay. So the guys that are ahead of me, they're going to beat me for sure. The guys
hmm
that are behind me aren't going to catch me, so just finish.
hmm
So I just held my own finish. I ended up coming second, which was kind of cool. And then I went over and said to the guy who came first, can I borrow you? Because I only gave one medal out, first place medal. And I said, can I borrow your medal for a minute just so I can take a photograph of me wearing a medal in Darwin and show my wife? And he gave it to me. He said, here, you have it.
You're kidding? Do you still have it?
That's what I said, no, because I gave it back to him. He came down here and raced, and I deliberately took it back. And I said, thanks for that. Here's your medal back. And he was really happy about it. We've actually become really, really, really good mates, and we've run into each other in the weirdest places.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Darwin really stands out for me. It was so much fun, and we will go back there and race again for sure. It's a
Mm,
beautiful place, it's a beautiful town, but to go and do a triathlon in Darwin is really unique,
mm.
and it's unique for me, and it'll be unique for the greater triathlon community. But yeah, just so much fun. So that was, yeah, by far the one event that stands out in my mind.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, such beautiful stories. Yeah, I think from what you've told me as well, that in terms of your running, I think the most you've run is 25 kilometers or something like that. So the prospect of running a marathon, from what you shared with me previously, perhaps is out of reach. I mean, do you feel like you're missing out at all?
No,
Mm.
no, there's no chance. There's no chance
Yeah.
of me wanting to run 42.2 kilometres. No chance. And I do enjoy the running. And the
Mm.
25 was just pushing an effort for the T100 training I was doing earlier this year. And I was just enjoying running on that day. And I got to 25 and my ankle had said, that's enough. And I thought,
Mm.
well, I don't need to run any further. I could have pushed to probably 30, but I didn't need to run any further. So I'm happy. I've achieved 21
Mm.
a number of times. And I've got a number of medals from half marathons and virtual half marathons and
Mhm.
a heap of tens and plenty of jetty to jetties and things like that. Um, but a full marathon, just like a full Ironman, Dave, if
Yep.
you're listening to this, no full Ironman for me either. I'm happy with the halves.
Mhm.
Halves suit me. I'm getting older and I've got to look after my body because I've still got that other goal to achieve, to be racing when I'm 80. So I need to be able to.
It's interesting you mentioned that. I don't know if you remember this, but at the end of our chat about a month ago or thereabouts, you said something that really, really stuck with me. I don't know if you remember this. You said for me to have a conversation with 60-year-old Josh. And it really, really challenged me because most of us are driven by trying to make our younger selves proud of us. You seem to be very future focused. You've always been setting these longer term aspirational goals and having conversations, in your case, with your 80-year-old self. Where does that mindset come from?
I think that came from when I set the goal to be competitive when I'm 80.
Mm.
And it was about what does being competitive look like when I'm 80?
Mm.
And you look around the triathlon community, and there are some brilliant people that are out there competing in the 80 plus age category, and they just keep going, and they're so proud, and the people around them are so proud, and I want to be one of those people. And there's a guy I keep running into at all the triathlon events. He just keeps turning up, and him and his wife are just lovely people. His name's Bill Winter, and for those who know Bill, he's just a wonderful human being, and he's another one of those guys that I turn up. We all have hugs and we just have a laugh and before and after, and yeah, I want to be that guy. But to
Mm.
be that guy, I can't push myself or punish myself now, which is why I don't want to do marathons or full Ironman or things like that. I don't want to punish my body now that I become even more debilitated with injuries and ailments as I get older. So if I get an injury now, I can deal with it and I can overcome it. But as you get older, it gets harder to overcome. So, Josh,
Mm.
when you get my age, you'll realise that a 2 week injury is a 4 week injury.
Mm.
And as you get older, it's a 6 week injury. And then it's a 2 month or a 3 month injury. And all of a sudden you're doing one event a year. So I constantly check in with my 80-year-old self to go, what am I doing today to make sure I'm going to be fine and fresh when
Mm.
I'm that age?
Mm.
And that helps a lot. So when I think I'm injured, I want to go for a run. What does my 80-year-old self say today? Well, this is
Mm.
just rest. Go put the Normatec legs back on and sit down and read a book.
Yeah. The other thing, after we caught up a few weeks ago, and you emailed this to me, you shared a story about someone called Stanzen. Are you happy to share that story with us and the impact that it's had on you?
Yeah, that literally changed my life. That 6 minutes. So I took Selena to Mooloolaba Triathlon, and she thought when I signed up, she thought, oh, she's just going to watch. And
Mm.
then I said to her, no, you're doing the run. And I'm just going to swim and ride because that's the part I enjoy. So you can do the run. It was a few years ago now, but it just happened to be a really, really hot day.
Mhm.
And off she went on the run, and she said it was not much fun. She didn't enjoy it at all. But we were back at the hotel after uh, that event because we were staying the Sunday night. And we were just sitting in the pool and just having something to eat. And she said to me, oh, I had to be in Brisbane. There was a show in Brisbane tonight. What was that show? And she looked it up and it was called the Resilience Project.
Mhm.
And she said, oh, I bought tickets in COVID and they cancelled it and they rescheduled to now. And I just remembered it's on now. And I said, well, why don't we go? She said, oh, I don't think you'll enjoy it. And I said, yeah, but do you want to go? She said, yeah. I said, oh, let's go. So we just packed the hotel up, forfeited the night, came back to Brisbane and went to the Resilience Project.
So that's
And
Hugh Van Seilenberg, is it?
but Hugh, when he was first talking about it, he was doing his Resilience Project tour, he was talking about how he got into it. And he talked about his sister with anorexia and the challenges around that. And then he talked about going to India with his girlfriend for a couple of weeks to do some teaching, some
Mm-hmm.
English teaching. And he ended up being there for several months. But in that time, in that story, he talks about a little boy there called Stanzen. And Stanzen's the reason Stanzen is the reason I am who I am today. That the story of Stanzen is profound. And it's really, really simple in the sense of, and Hugh talks about it. And it's if you go to YouTube and you type in the story of Stanzen,
Mm.
and you'll find it.
Yeah.
If you go to Paramount Plus, the Resilience Project is still on Paramount Plus for you to go and watch for an
Okay.
hour with this in it. And it's the exact presentation that I went to.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to the event, and I should say we went to the event. We got in, we sat down, and Hugh came on, and I started looking. He was an engaging guy. He's a funny guy, and he makes a bit of fun of himself, and he's a funny looking guy as well, and he says that himself. But um, Selena looked over to me when we got through the story of his sister, and we got into the story of Stans, and Selena had looked over at me just to see how I was engaging with the show, and she swears for the entire time he was on stage, for the hour or so he was on stage, my eyes didn't leave him once.
Wow.
And I was just focused on everything,
Mm.
everything he said. But it was around the story of Stanza, which I'll tell you now. So Stanza's a little boy in India, a small village, and I don't know exactly where, but um, very poor community. And Hugh had been there in the community, and Stanza was one of the boys in the school that he was teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And Stanza was just the happiest boy. And all Stanza wanted to do was go around and talk about the things he was happy about. And he'd look at he'd walk over to the swing set, which was broken, and something would move, and he'd go, this, DIS, this. And he'd look down at his old shoes, and he'd go, this. And he'd look at his friends or whatever it might be, and he'd go, this. And the story goes that Hugh tried to correct him to go, no, it's not this, it's this. Because Stanton couldn't pronounce the TH. But it was this. What had eventually happened was Hugh had realised that Stanton was pointing out the things he was happy about, the things he was grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just walking around going, I'm grateful to have shoes. I'm grateful to have food. I'm grateful to have swings. I'm grateful to go to school. So he'd just say this. And that's all he would say was this. So for the thousands, tens of thousands of Australians now, if you said the word this to them, they would know exactly what you're talking about. And they would live that. And I live that. And I live it to the point that my license plate says this, and it has the word grateful underneath it. I've got the word this written on the back of my garage door that I see every day. When I race, for anyone that looks at my race photos, on one arm I've got the word this written on there in Texter, and on the other arm I've got the word baby for Selena, because I can't write Selena with my left hand. And that's how I race. And it's just a reminder to be grateful, and it's just a life motto now. But without that 6 minutes, that story of Stanton, I'd still be happy, but I wouldn't feel as grateful and blessed as I do now.